I have a problem. So I tried to fix my animation blueprints this week, specifically the upper body layering. And I realised the issue isn't a single node, it's the entire logic of how I've structured my animation blueprint. So this week I spent a lot of time trying to work out how to improve, especially to get the upper body animations working correctly with the lower body animations. I feel like I really need to get this resolved before progressing with other systems. So I've been building a third-person action-adventure shooter game in Unreal Engine, and I recently started implementing a cover system. And working on that, it's exposed some flaws in the systems which I've been trying to fix. Currently, my system relies on having too many sets of animations. This would leave me drowning and overwhelmed with the number of animations I need for the project. So as painful as it is, I feel like it will pay off in the end. Hopefully. So from last week, my main takeaway was that it needed to be far simpler in terms of how it's structured. So just for some background, my character currently has an animation blueprint base, and then for every pose or weapon type, I have a child of that with all the various animations set. That way I get to reuse the same animation blueprints, but have a completely different set of animations for them. So anytime I swap a weapon, I link a different anim instance instead. Which sounds convoluted, but it works quite well. Currently, it was too tight to full body animations, which means any time I wanted to slightly adjust a pose, I would almost essentially need a whole new set of animations. That's just redundant. So originally I had multiple different sets of animations depending on what weapon type I had. I had one for unarmed, one for pistol, one for rifle, and so on. But that system's becoming quickly unmanageable. As the more weapon types I add, the more animation sets I need. For each weapon type this way, you'd need a walk, a jog, a sprint, a turn in place, a pivot, a start, stop, a crouch, a cycle, and more. The list goes on. Additionally, when introducing the cover system, I need a full set for each different weapon type of cover animations, which seems excessive. So my idea is this: instead of having 20 to 30 animations per weapon type, I could instead have 20 to 30 base animations, and then just simply offset their arms to suit the weapons that they're carrying. And that seems a much better process, obviously. So the idea was to create a single animation blueprint, and then just vary the poses as required. And this would avoid having duplicating graphs and having to link new anim instances and more. Now, I am using the Lyra system as a base for my animations, which is why I've ended up in this situation. And I think that is how they've applied it. At least that's how my one applies it. So I'm straying away from that, but I feel like it'll be for the better. This will make things simpler to implement and hopefully more performant. If I want to add a new weapon type, all I have to do is add the new default pose and the new sway animations without having to recreate everything else associated with it. And hopefully that will save me a lot of time going forwards. And if I want to add a new logic, for example cover, then I only have to apply the same offsets to those characters and animations rather than having to recreate the full cover set per weapon. At least that's the idea. The key is this will make my workflow more flexible and more adaptable. So to achieve this, I decided to use layering in my animation blueprint, separating the arms and the upper bit of the spine from the rest of the body, therefore allowing me to play two different animations, one for the body and one for the arms, on the same mannequin at the same time. So I started experimenting with bone blending, applying a static pose just to test how it would work. And while this worked, things quickly got complicated. The biggest issue I ran into was arm swing, specifically what should drive it. So when the character runs, their arms swing and sway. This is timed with their feet animations. But how do I actually implement this? It's not a static pose, it's not a single cycle animation. I don't know. You see, my movement system uses a state machine with start, cycle, stop, idle, and more. Each of those require their own arm movements. So by default, I would need at least 4 different arm movements, one for each of those different states. But that gets more complex, because once again, I have to time the arm swings with the rest of the movement. So trying to recreate the entire state machine just for the arms seems wrong. It would introduce conflicting state logic and problems over ownership. I would also be redundantly duplicating logic. So the big question was, can I find a way to introduce arm sway without overcomplicating the whole system? I thought additive animations might be a solution, so I tried experimenting with them, converting my existing ones to additive. That failed pretty badly. It became clear that I really don't understand additive animations. Not at all. But whilst I was there, I reorganised parts of the animation blueprint, mostly housekeeping just to keep it organised. By that point I decided to pause there and leave it for a bit, to think about further. I feel like I need to better research methods for controlling this. One of the thoughts I was having was using separate additive animations per each pose, which will be driven by the character speed. But the problem there is that then that won't sync necessarily with the feet animations. The other option is to use my existing state machine and have it play not just the full body animations, but the upper body ones as well. Now I don't know if this is going to work, and I really don't know what the cleanest way of implementing this is. The main realization this week is that it's not just going to be a few series of nodes that I need to change. It's a much more structurally integral issue that I need to resolve first. Until I sort out how state, movement, and layering work, I won't be able to progress this properly. And any other fix is just going to be fragile and temporary. I think I really need to step back and think longer about how I'm going to introduce layering, because I want a productive workflow going forwards where I can, with relative ease, adapt and transform animations to suit my gameplay needs. I'll likely try and experiment with prototyping a cleaner approach before integrating it into my main animation blueprint. So there's not really a big revelation or a big breakthrough at the end where I achieve my goals, but that's where things stand right now. I'm hoping to keep working on it and pushing things forward, and I expect as I keep working at it, I'll slowly shape it into the correct method. Maybe I'll look if anyone else has done something online. So the realities are, not every week's going to be major progress, and sometimes it feels like there are barely any updates to show. But I think it's important to explain that and to still show the stuff I'm working on and thinking about in between those major breakthroughs, just to be honest with how it's all going. So that's my week's progress, and thank you for listening.